A warm welcome to yet another exciting installment of the E-Lounge. Today, we are having a conversation with a leadership trailblazer, author Mr. Lincoln Mali, on his book, Blazing a Trail, Lessons for African Leadership. Mr. Mali is currently a CEO of a NASDAQ-listed fintech company, Lesaka Technologies. With over 25 years' experience as a noteworthy leader in the banking and fintech space, Mr. Mali has been dubbed the human-centered leader of our time. Having started his leadership journey during the 1980s as a student activist, in his book, Blazing a Trail, Mr. Mali shares his leadership journey addressing issues such as integrity, women empowerment, staff engagement, and the imposter syndrome. Mr. Mali goes on to draw reflections from family, friends, and colleagues to highlight leadership characteristics and techniques that typify the new path of leadership that will move our country forward. As a prolific writer, his blog, Conversations with Lincoln, is where he puts pen to paper, or better yet, a keyboard to screen, about topics that he's passionate about, which include leadership, ethics, transformation, and social change. This is but one of the few ways that he shares his leadership lessons. The E-Lounge is one of our knowledge share platforms. We do hope that you will tune in, you will take away the knowledge, and remember that those who deserve to lead should read.
A very warm welcome to the E-Lounge. Today, in our conversation on leadership lessons, we are joined by a trailblazer who's written a book titled aptly Blazing a Trail, a student activist, a business leader. You know, he's many, many things, but at the core of it, Mr. Lincoln Mali, a leader in our society. A very warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much, Swam. I'm so happy to be here, and thank you for honoring me.
We are equally pleased that you were able to join us. I want to start off, you know, when you go to interviews, people ask you, tell us about yourself. So I want to start off by asking you just a brief background. Where did you grow up?
Yes.
Who is Lincoln Mali?
Yes. I grew up in Tabeja, in Port Elizabeth. Was born 55 years ago from loving parents, Umzwandile Nzepo Mali, my dad, Unombeko, Gladys Somerton, my mom, and I grew up with my siblings, UJB, Nolinda, Nonomangesi, and so that is my family. And Kulele, in Kwazakele Township, that's where I grew up, and I studied in Port Elizabeth, you know, in the high schools and secondary schools there, and so that's where I come from. Absolutely.
In the book, you share a bit about your history, where you come from, the fond memories of you spending time in Fort Beaufort, spending time in Hogsback with your great aunt, you know,
Yes.
and other family members. I just want you to, when we start off this conversation, to speak about diversity and inclusion.
Yes.
In a society that is increasingly polarized,
Yes.
right? In your own past, you share with us how your family is, for lack of a correct term, mixed race.
Yes.
And the challenges and the positives of coming from such a family. How important is diversity and inclusion in today's business? And also just share, you know, some lessons from your past as well.
Yeah. I'm inspired by the words of Thabo Mbeki when he says, I'm an African. And it describes what it makes him to be an African and what are the components that made him to be an African.
Yes.
Part of our legacy are those who came from across the seas to become settlers in this country. Yes. They are part of us. So in my part of the family, on my mother's side, they were the 1820 settlers, which were the Somertons, who arrived here and settled in Hogsback. And when they had settled in Hogsback, there were two young sons, Godfrey Somerton and his brother Albert Somerton. Yeah. And these were tall, blonde, white men who were meant to, you know, fall in love with other white people.
Yes.
But they fell in love with two Xhosa women who were also sisters in the early 1900s.
progressive.
What are the chances that these two people would fall in love?
Yeah.
And they would live through the difficult years of Group Areas Act. Yeah. They were not allowed to love, they're not allowed to marry, but they married. And they continued to defy those laws that said they could not be married and they couldn't be together. So my mother's side of the family, the Summertons, come from that division that was brought about by the apartheid system. But when you think about one of the founding platforms of our constitution was the Freedom Charter that said South Africa belongs to all who live in it. That was as early as 1955. That put a non-racial character to our liberation struggle. So when I was growing up, my father, who had a profound influence on me, made me to understand the history of my mom and his history. On my father's side, I come from the Xhosa family called Mali, and they came from a place called Pearson, and they moved all the way being, chased away from farms, and they ended up in Fort Beaufort. And they also experienced Group Areas Act and being removed from their land. So in my family, there's been forced removals 3 times. One, when the farms were taken away because my grandmothers were not white. Or when in Fort Beaufort, my family was moved away into an area that was going to be white. And then when in Port Elizabeth, they were moved away from Coston to go to the townships. But the beauty of my life is that those people showed through resilience that nobody could define them. They were ahead of their time. And in 1964, that same family left South Africa to go and settle in Zambia, which had just become liberated because they could not farm here. But all of that, what gives me joy is that those 4 people, Godfrey, Albert, Sarah, and Harriet, Veronica and Harriet, they now lie in Hogsback in 2 graves, 2 couples that were ahead of their time, still in love. No laws would break them. And so when I define myself, I define myself as an African. I have in me the Samaritan blood and I have the Mali blood. And to conclude the story, when you go to Hogsback, the farm that was taken away, at the back of that farm is a beautiful mountain with a heart. And in front of that farm is Inhlokokanqika or Gaikaskop, where the British and the Xhosas fought many battles. So that is who I am, and that's where I come from.
It's a wonderful story, Mr. Mali. One would expect that coming from such a background in the history, and I'm sure the story has been told over many generations, what happened, the dispossession of land, you'd expect that you wouldn't be so accommodating, perhaps, to the notion of diversity and inclusion. And businesses are more and more focusing on this. What is the one lesson that you can share with leaders about the importance of diversity and inclusion in their companies?
When I look at our founding fathers and mothers, they were ahead of our time. They said, here's the choice. We could kill one another and have no nation and destroy one another. Tomorrow it's black versus white, the other day it's colored versus Indian, the other day it's Pedi versus Xhosa or Zulu. Or we could try and create a diverse community where its culture, its religion, its language is respected. They chose the path of a non-racial society where they said, let's be the embodiment of a future that our children can aspire to when they can be themselves. Yet in that same constitution, our founding fathers said, we must still do redress because there are many things that reflect the past. So you can't just simply say non-racialism or rainbow nation without redress. They go together. Transformation and quality and excellence go together. It's not either or. And so when I look at businesses, as a leader of my business, I have customers from all race groups. I have shareholders from all race groups. I have staff members from all race groups. As a leader, I must inspire all of them to succeed and as a non-racial society. When I don't recognize women in my team, when I don't recognize young people in my team, when I don't recognize Afrikaners or Indians or whatever in my team, I lose part of my team. But when I'm a leader of all, not a leader of a faction, it's not only the people who came from Port Elizabeth that must thrive in my company. It's all staff members. They must look at me and see a leader of all. And that is what I think companies should do. Siya Kolisi, Rasi Erasmus and them have shown us, that if you take a team that's diverse, it can win in the world. But you're recognizing the diversity of that team. When we were screaming, we were not screaming for that player or that player, we were screaming for the team because the team was united. So our communities have to be united. When people criticize me and say, yeah, we hear you talk about this, and I say, tell me, what is the alternative? Everybody says, we don't like this rainbow nation you guys talk about. It's like, what is the alternative? If you're in Limpopo, only Limpopo people must work there. If we're in Northwest, only Northwest people will work there. Is that where we want to get to? Where we divide one another on race or color? In Soweto, I mean, I'm from Port Elizabeth, I work here. Should people from Soweto kick us out? Is that what we're talking about? Or we're talking about a society where we try and build something new and not be trapped by the past. We recognize the past, we work on it so that we have a brighter future.
Absolutely. I like that you mentioned the women empowerment in that answer. I'm going to come back to that in a second. Just looking at your past, those days in your teens and your early 20s as a student leader, someone said a firebrand, orator, speaker. Just share with us some lessons you learned as a young student leader, and how have those shaped you to become who you are in business today?
I think the 1980s were a volatile time, a lot of conflict. We were in daily battles with the police, daily battles with the army, throwing stones, running away, being arrested, in and out of jail, all of that. So we were not studying for 2 years. 1985 and 1986. And we were running away from the police and we were being hidden in churches. And my father met me in one of those churches. And he asked me, when are you going back to school? I'm like, what do you mean going back to school? We're still fighting. Our leaders are still in jail. Our demands have not been met. And my father said, it's not the size of the stone you can throw against the police. It's not the potency of the petrol bomb you can throw against the army. It is the values that you imbibe. It is the education that you get. It is the principles you uphold. And it is being the model of the future you want that will make the biggest difference. I mean, obviously, I couldn't just agree, but his words had hit home. That when I was young, I was an unconscious leader. I was passionate about the battles, but I was not seeing that this is beyond just these skirmishes. What my father and our other founding fathers had to do was to look beyond the conflict and to what the future would be. My father said, I want you one day to go to Harvard. I'm like, where's Harvard? We want guns, we want stones. But they could see beyond the conflict. And so for me, the value of education became clear. The responsibility of leadership. Leadership is not about excitement. It's an enormous responsibility to look after the people you're entrusted to lead. Thirdly, you have to have vision as a leader. You can't, I mean, imagine if you're a passenger and the driver is driving and all he's doing is looking at the rear view mirror. driver has to look in the front, occasionally look at the rearview mirror. So those leaders had vision. And so that's what I say to myself. I always have to have a vision. Where am I going? How am I going to get there? What will I need? And so those are things I learned from a very, very young age.
Thank you, Mr. Mali. In those years, you write in the book, or rather, Ms. Tanika Mbopa, I believe she was the principal at Newell High School.
Yes.
And she says to you and your comrades,
Yes.
To some extent terrorists
Yes.
in some quarters.
Yes.
And she says to you, she is not, I must quote her,
Yes.
I am not interested in your past.
Yes.
I want to focus on your future.
Yes.
So right there for me, as I read these words, I said, wow, what is the value and the essence of leadership? How does it change society when people are allowed to fail?
Yes.
And when leaders give second chances,
Yes.
because she was practically saying, I'm turning the page.
Yes.
We're on a blank slate.
Yes.
This is the rules of the game now. This is how you're going to play the rules. I'm not interested on your checkered past.
Yes.
What is the role, do you think, of allowing failure in business?
Yes.
And being vulnerable in business and giving second chances to the people we lead in ensuring that the organizations are sustainable?
When I was looking for role models in my leadership journey, when I was in the public sector and in the private sector, I found that I couldn't find many. Because leadership seemed to be about egos, titles, status, power, and that's not how I was brought up. But when I thought back, I realized that my leaders were hidden in plain sight. They were my priests, they were my sports coaches, they were my teachers, and my school principals.
Yes.
If you go back to any township or village you come from, you will see your teachers and your priests and others. They might not have gone up the economic ladder. When they see you, their face lights up.
Absolutely.
Because their joy and their calling is to produce people like you.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a leader like that. So Mrs. Mbopa remains my role model. Because when we were expelled from school, when we were in and out of jail, nobody gave us a chance. We were called the lost generation.
Yes.
We were called the marginalized youth. But she said, I don't know you, I know your parents.
Yes.
I'm not interested in your past, I'm interested in your future.
Yeah.
In this school, you can do all of your political things, but you must pass.
Yeah.
And I must never see you in this office.
Yeah.
And that is how I matriculated at Newell High, having been expelled at Itembelihle High. And so she's remained a role model in my life up to today. So in business, success is through people. Every business I've led has not succeeded because of my ingenuity. It is because the people I've journeyed with had ideas, had energy, did amazing things. My job was to create an environment for them to succeed. Mrs. Mbopa created an environment for me and others to succeed. I should do the same for others. When people fail, try and understand why they failed, but have honest conversations with them. Hold them accountable, and you'll be amazed. So in my career, I look at people I've worked with and what they have done and what they've achieved now. That's what gives me joy.
Yeah.
Because like Mrs. Mbopa, my job is to produce other leaders.
Yes, absolutely. And it brings me to the next theme that you covered in the book that deals with the different generations of people that you work with as a leader, as a student leader in your own family and also in business. And we are at a state in, I think in the world, not only our country, where we've got 6 generations in the workplace.
Yes.
And you write somewhere in the book, I think it's page 93, you mentioned that you were brought up to relate to older people in equal terms.
Yes.
And this is a debate that we've been having, right, with the colleagues, that is it important to, use subtitles for people that are older than us, Bhuti, Sisi, Mama, Tata, in the workplace? And to what extent does this level of showing respect, it temper with the accountability bit? How do you balance the two?
Yes.
And you go at length in the book in explaining this. And I think this is something that we need to address.
Yes.
Just what is the secret in doing that? How do you balance this?
Yeah. So I had the amazing fortune of having older people give me a chance in sport.
Okay.
In rugby, I played with some of the oldest people, veterans. In cricket, in football, I played with those people, and they gave me an opportunity. I respected them because of their actions, not because they were demanding respect. They were earning respect from me through the way they conducted themselves.
Okay.
Dr. Govan Beki
Yes.
stayed for so many years on Robben Island with Mandela and others.
Yes.
When he came out, we were the leaders at the time. The other leaders were arrested. He didn't look down on us as young people. He embraced us and we respected him.
Yes.
So the starting point for us who are older is not to demand respect. Let's earn respect. Because how you relate to young people determines whether they're going to relate back to you. So what I learned during those times was how older people were able to influence me by how they related to me. I was then able to get what they are saying. But if they had come down and try and tell me what is to be done, it wasn't going to work. So what I've now done throughout my life and my career, I've used the same thing. Because now I've increasingly become older. I'm now probably older in my team than in the past where I was always the youngest.
Yes.
What do? I work with young people. I engage with young people all the time at the same level. Trust is earned. Respect is earned. Leadership itself is earned. So if you think about Fees Must Fall, where do you think those kids went? They're in our companies.
Yes.
If we can't relate to them, they will be as disruptive as Lincoln was when he was at university and when he was at high school.
Yeah.
So the point is, let's create environments for engagement. It doesn't mean that you can't hold people accountable. Mrs. Mboba held me accountable. My parents held me accountable. But there was a dialogue. My kids, the conversations I have with them, I hold them accountable, but there's a dialogue.
Yeah.
There's a discussion. If I just come and say, I'm the father, leave the title.
Yeah.
Influence. Leadership is about influence. Influence and have the humility to be influenced. You can't be a leader and you cannot be influenced. All you want is one directional. You want to influence, but you're not being influenced. That's the dynamic now in the workplace where younger people will learn from the older guys. The older guys will learn from the younger people, and you create a dynamic team. Same as in sport. This team that won the Rugby World Cup had veterans who will not play again.
Yeah.
But the youngsters who will play in the next World Cup. That's the dynamic that you want.
I think for me, that's a quotable quote there to say that leaders must be influenced.
Yes.
Because I don't think that we think of leadership in that manner, most of the time. Staying within this theme of influencing leaders. So in 1994, thereabout, you are in a trip with the then Minister of Education, Professor Pengo.
Yes.
And Professor Pengo is receiving what I believe to be quite a generous donation in excess of millions, right? To universities and black universities that are struggling.
Yes.
And he decides he's going to take not even 10% of that money, only $150,000.
Yes.
And you are upset.
I was
in fact,
very angry.
as I read the book, you're incensed.
I'm incensed. I'm thinking, We've always heard about selling out.
Yeah.
Now we're in government. This is 94. We're in America. Maybe this is what they mean by selling out. We are not selling out. They are donating money to us.
Yes.
And he's saying, no. We're not going to take that money. Give us a smaller amount for capacity building. I'm like, what is this capacity building? So when we were driving back to that thing of leaders being approachable, influencing, I asked him, Minister Nolosi, why didn't you take all the money? He said, because in many of our universities, we don't have the capacity to spend. Then I'm confused. What do you mean? I mean, if there's money, you should spend. He says, no. You must build the right systems of accountability of how much money is going to come in to do what? What are the projects, right? And what reports on those projects so that you can report back that the money that was given was used for these things. That was in 1994. Because the man had worked for 13 years in the World Lutheran Federation in Switzerland. He knew how to manage money. So when I started to see people abusing money, corrupt and all those things, I kept on thinking back.
Yeah.
If you don't have the right person, you don't have the right skill and the right accountability and the right systems, whatever money you're throwing will be squandered. Either money will not be spent, which means money gets returned back to the fiscus, or money will be used in things that are not needed. So as early as 1994, he was teaching me about accountability. He was teaching me about ethics. He was teaching me about living an incorruptible life. So those are the lessons I learned from him. So I turned from being angry to be a learning student and understand. And those words have lived with me throughout my career.
Yeah. True to what you said earlier, Siswita Tunyiso.
Yes.
She also writes about you.
Yes.
And this is where I think we need to acknowledge your other half, your better half in your life, and how she has influenced you. Because you've said leaders must be influenced. And true to your word, Siswita says that Lincoln can lead and Lincoln can be led. And she's referring to the beautiful relationship you have with your partner, Osva.
Yes.
Just share with us how important it is to have partners that you can be influenced by, that can shape your career, that can shape your leadership ethos and values.
There's an incredible book I'm reading at the moment about Nelson Mandela and Winnie Mandela. How these two powerful individuals had each other's lives, but also had their own individual lives, had individual ideas, but had collective ideas. So I learned from my father how to treat my mother. I learned how to love. My father used to call my mother Lavi. I mean, for a black man in those days, to be walking the streets of Port Elizabeth, Main Street. I still have those pictures of my dad holding my mom. My dad used to kiss my mom at home. So those things were embedded in me. When I met Zva, she was an individual in her own right. She had views. She had dreams. We found a way to be complementary.
Sure.
When she's in the lead, I'm in support. When I'm in the lead, she's in support. What is a problem for leaders, even in a home environment, is where you want to be a bride in all weddings, where you want to be a corpse in all funerals, where you want your word to be final in everything. It doesn't work. So for me, Zwa and I have been together now for more than 33 years. And we go through everything because we respect one another. We see things completely differently. There are things she will say, I'm like, or things she will do, and there are many things that I do she doesn't approve, but she's accepted me for who I am. So it's the same as in a working environment. If a leader cannot work with their leadership team, there's a problem. Because you only want to be the one making decisions. Why do you think your exco is there? They're not there for show. They are part of the leadership team. So collective wisdom is such an important thing, but it requires humility to accept that you don't have all the answers, that your wife or your husband or your partner or your team members may have ideas. Collective wisdom is very important. If you look back to our founding fathers on Robben Island, they would debate everything. There was a collective wisdom there. The relationship between Sisulu and Mandela, collective wisdom. If you look at the relationship between O.R. Tambo and Nelson Mandela, collective wisdom. Yeah. The problem we have now is that egos get into the way because I always want to be quoted. I always want to be heard instead of recognizing that it's not only my voice, they are the voices of my colleagues as well.
Around me. You say in the book when you were, I think, the speechwriter for the minister,
yes,
that you could not, to your point, you could not now publicly be telling people that I wrote that.
Yes.
Because you wrote the speech for the minister.
Yes.
I want to move on to something that you share a lot, and it's evident in the book as well, about the circle of influence. Yes. So there's two circles I want us to talk about.
Yes.
People talk about life, work balance, and so on. But take us through the circle of each individual's life, the different aspects, spirituality, education, the family, and how important it is to balance these. And also perhaps your own crucible when you decided, I'm going to change my life, take a different job, pay more attention to my family, how important it is for us to manage that circle. The other circle I want us to touch on briefly is the circle of influence.
Yes.
Who are the 5 people around you?
Yeah. So let me start with around 2012, my career was rocketing. I was moving up in my corporate career at the Standard Bank Group. Yeah. Peter Slebush was my boss. One day did a huge celebration where we always honored people, and now that day honored me. Firstly, by taking all the writings I've ever done to my staff, package them into something that looked like a book, and gave this to me in front of everybody. Can you imagine? During the people. I mean, I was making sure I'm not crying. And then he says, you're going to go to Harvard, where my father wanted me to go many years back. And my father was no longer there. Yeah. I got to Harvard. And I thought I would come back with a badge of honor. Yeah. But Professor Clay Christensen challenged us. And his lecture, he asked us, how will you measure your life? And that was painful. Because I realized that as I was moving up, I was not paying the same attention to my family as I would have wanted to. But everybody thought I was great. Yeah. But I knew I could be better. Okay. I knew I wanted to be better. So sitting in that room as a student, I read his book. And I realized that if I don't change, I will lose my wife. I will lose my children. Because he was telling us the story of highly successful people who were lonely. Wow. Because they did not invest time in their family. I then was asked by my class to be the class speaker at Harvard, the first African to be asked to be a class speaker at the AMP class. Yeah. The theme of my speech was towards a more balanced scorecard. Okay. Because we talk about balanced scorecard in business, but what's that balanced scorecard that includes your community and your family? And so when Zva came for the graduation, I had a conversation with her and I said, you were right. There are times when she would say to me, you're not present.
Yeah. Like, what do you mean?
Dude, what are you talking about? I'm here. And she would say, why are you not taking the kids to school? Because I saw Sim Chabalala and Peter Slebush taking kids to school, and I would say, the reason why Peter Slebush and Sim Chabalala can take kids to school is because there are people like me who have to do the job. So you rationalize bad behavior. I needed to change. And over the last 13 years, that investment I made has made the biggest difference in my life. They were not asking me to work less harder. They were not asking me not to travel. Yeah. They were just saying that when it's their time, I must be present. And I've invested that 13 years into the life of my kids and my marriage, and that helped. And so I wanted to write about this so that other young people who think that I'm just working on this deal, I'm just working on this promotion, I'm just working on this thing, otherwise
Later.
then by the time sometime you want to come back, you've lost it all.
Absolutely.
And is it worth it? So when I reflected, my life was not balanced. My finances were not balanced. My health wasn't balanced. I needed to change. And over the last 13 years, that's the change I made.
Okay. Standard Bank, I'm glad you mentioned.
Yes.
So a speaker, author we've hosted here, leader we've hosted here,
Yes.
Mr. Mteto Nyati,
Yes.
wrote the foreword to your book.
Yes.
And I want to go to a way where he's writing about corporate politics.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to read this.
Yes.
He says that in writing this book, Lincoln has made a conscious decision not to dwell on corporate politics. However, reading between the lines, I could pick up that his workplaces were shark-infested waters of office politics. His interpersonal skills, coupled with employee and customer engagement strategies, helped him navigate these dangerous waters. He was also able to forge alliances across boundaries that gave him enormous functional power because he brought to the table deep customer and market insights that his adversaries and managers usually lacked. I mean, it's an insightful piece that he wrote, but I'm going to stop right here so that people can read for themselves. What I want to get into, at Standard Bank, you say you get this promotion. You get questioned by your own colleagues to your face as to how exactly did you get this promotion? Why are you getting it? And you get into the waters of self-doubt,
Yes.
imposter syndrome.
Yes.
And for someone like you, we wouldn't think that would happen.
Yes.
I really wanted to share a little bit about how leaders get into imposter syndrome. How does one deal with that, quieting even your own mind chatter, and how you get yourself out of that?
I think that work environments can be toxic. There can be people who are power hungry, that they would do anything to knife everybody in order to get to the top.
Yeah.
Those people might make your life unbearable. And you get to start to define yourself not in the way you are, but in the way they're trying to define you. And then something goes wrong or a mistake, and suddenly, particularly with women leaders, where you're doing well, you get to a presentation, and there are people who don't like you, don't believe in you, and there's something wrong in that PowerPoint. Instead of saying, this is like a wardrobe failure, let me fix it and move on.
Yes.
You make that your life.
Yeah.
You have to bounce back from that.
Yeah.
And bouncing back starts with knowing that the people who chose you for the job chose you because they believed in you. Why are you listening to the ones who don't believe you instead of listening to the ones who believe you?
Sure.
Secondly, the skills and the talent that got you here, your track record is there. Why worry about people that will never like you anyway?
Yeah.
And thirdly, when people are trying to bring you down to the gutter, don't go down with them. Stay above.
Right.
So when I was writing the book, I didn't write the book as a gossip column.
Sure.
I didn't write the book to trash the Standard Bank Group because I have amazing memories from the Standard Bank Group.
Yes.
I spent close to 20 years there. I grew and I got a lot, and I've got relationships that will last a lifetime.
Yeah.
But I wasn't going to allow those behaviors to go unnoticed. I must point those behaviors out so that the people who did those things know it's wrong to do those things. But they are not Standard Bank.
Yeah.
They will never be Standard Bank. Standard Bank are the millions of customers and thousands of staff members that are there. It's people who've been there for generations.
Yeah.
So ego makes some people to think they own an institution. I can never own an institution. You do your part, you pass on the baton, and you move on. So my advise to young people is that when you meet adversity, in whatever form, you have to dig deep. You have to be resilient. Many people didn't even know I had challenges because I was one of the most senior people in the bank. My job was to be the mascot,
Yes.
carry the flag,
Yeah.
and deal with my problems on the side.
Yeah.
So that's why Mteto says I avoided the politics, because it wasn't going to be, I'm going to thrash Standard Bank, because that's not me.
Yes.
And I still go to Standard Bank functions. I go and speak to young leaders there. I have many people I mentor there. I have relationships across the continent. So those are there. But I can point out to bad behavior and say, those people behave badly. And the people who are there will know who I'm talking about, and they can address that. But that's not for me, because I have to move on.
Yeah. Also providing a mirror for other leaders in other businesses to say, perhaps you are not aware this is the kind of behavior you're exhibiting, and it's causing the self-doubt in others that you don't desire in your business.
Absolutely, because I think all of us as leaders, somebody's watching, right? So if there are people that are leaving on my watch in droves, somebody's got to ask a question.
Yeah.
There's a problem with that Lincoln. Why is everybody leaving? Or if there's a persistent complaint about me and my behavior, somebody better watch. My board has to say, this leader is not right. Or my other colleagues have to call me out, because otherwise my behavior can affect an institution.
Yeah.
So that's why I didn't want the thing to be about one institution. It was about leadership lessons in corporates or the public sector, about what we see as toxic behavior that can affect people.
Yeah, absolutely. I linking into that, it's leadership lessons that I gleaned from the book from your dad.
Yes.
So every time you get a promotion, you phone home, and we do this. I mean, I remember when I got a post to be direct, I phoned home, saying, hey, I've got this now.
Yes.
So you phone your father, and you say each time his response is baffling you.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
What I pick up, what is consistent about the different responses it gives you about your promotion, he's asking you, do you deserve the job?
Yes.
Did you do well?
Yes.
Did you do the work? Are you still working hard?
Yes.
Do you treat everyone the same?
Yes.
And I just want you to share with us the lessons at the feet of that leader.
Yeah. My dad was about excellence. In anything you do, you had to be excellent. How you speak, how you dress, how you conduct yourself. My father used to say, your reputation is everything.
Yeah.
When your name comes up, what do people say? He says, you're not there, you can't defend yourself. But it's a sum total of your behaviors throughout.
Yeah.
2, hard work. My father never compromised on hard work. You have to work hard and deserve everything that you get because you work hard. The third one, which is ingrained in me, is treat everybody with respect and dignity, regardless of their status in life, regardless of their age, regardless of their wealth. That has helped me in my life. Traveling the length and breadth of this continent, it didn't matter to me who I am from. The same as this country. When I was working at the Standard Bank, when I used to look after Standard Bank's branches, there's no town where there's a Standard Bank branch I've not been there. And that's how you build relationships. So that when you're asking your staff to do something, all 13,000 will do because they can relate to you. And that's what leaders do not understand. Treating people with dignity and respect allows people to go the extra mile, because you're not doing it as a way of tricking them. You have a genuine relationship with them. And other people will tell you, you don't know, you spoke to me in this meeting, or you spoke to us and I was going through this and this is what had happened. That's that influence thing. Many leaders think that leadership is about titles. Leadership is not a title held. It's not a promotion attained. It is not a status achieved. It's a profound influence that must be felt. If you're not influencing as a leader, you're not leading, you're just taking a stroll on your own.
Your uncle, which I learned from the book, a very prolific sportsman.
Yes.
Sports administrator, you
Yes.
name it, cricket, and the other relatives who were in rugby. Yes. He wrote here a praise for you in recognition of the work that you've done for the family and in your own personal life as a leader in business, and what that means to him as a family. Tying back to what you said about your father inculcating those values of ethical leadership and so on. You speak a lot about sport.
Yes.
To what extent do you think we as a country are, invested in making sure that sports shifts our society, the social cohesion
We're not doing enough. When I look at my own upbringing, I was an altar boy at church. I was, a scout. I played rugby, cricket, and football.
Yes.
Those sports, or sports in general, help you with discipline.
Yeah.
They help you with relationships. They help you to understand others and help you with competition, excellence, and all of that. So I come from a sporting family. My father played, my uncle played, all those people played. So we have a history of that. But for me now, I'm investing in the next generation. So I have a rugby tournament that I've been doing since 2014. I have a cricket tournament I've been doing since 2014. I support a football team. All of those are about investing in the future because there were people who invested in me.
Yeah.
There were sports coaches who believed in me, older people who played with me. I want to do the same for the next generation.
Okay. There are 3 women in your life, or more actually, if I actually read quite a bit from your book. But I want to focus on the 3 women in your life. Unobundu, Usva, Unombeko, your mother, Aunt Ida, your great aunt, and your daughters, and many other women. You call them comrades. I saw this Pemia go in one of the pictures.
Yes.
Your views on women empowerment and the role of leaders, because it is essentially still quite a man's world in terms of leadership. We see in the boards, in top positions, it's still it's dominated by men up there. What's the responsibility, do you think, of leaders in women development, women leadership development?
I can't be a woman, but I can be a gender activist.
Okay.
Unashamedly. And that's a stance I've taken throughout my career.
Okay.
And it comes from these influences. My great aunt, Anaida, and my grandma, Unobantu, and my other grandma, Umei, Mamgad. These were powerful praying women that had such a profound influence on me. And then my mom, Ulafi, she had an influence on me. And then obviously Usva, my wife, who is an equal and a partner. Then my daughters, Ulihle and Amara, very assertive, very independent. And I wanted to raise them to be independent young women who can succeed. But I've also got my son, Liam, to understand that he must succeed in life not because of patriarchy.
Sure.
He must be able to compete with women, but he must also know how to treat women. Then I have an army of nephews and nieces who I lead, because I can't be a leader in so-called society when I'm not a leader in my family.
Sure.
Do my nephews and nieces see me as a leader? Do they see me as a role model? So I have lots of conversations with my nieces and my nephews, because if I can't influence them, I can't dare to influence the rest of the world. So coming to the workplace then with all of that background, there are a number of key things that must be done and that I do all the time. First is unashamedly create an environment where women thrive. 2, stand up against women abuse, sexual harassment in the workplace. Thirdly, give senior positions to women. because they are there. And 4, celebrate the success of women. And 5, never allow women to make false choices between a career and their family. These are their choices that they must make, not because of somebody else.
Yeah.
So in my journey, I have amazing women I worked with who are now CEOs of many organizations throughout the continent. I learned from them.
Yes.
They guided me. When I got it wrong, they would teach me things. I would have meetings at 8 and they would say, sorry, we don't have wives. Let's not have a meeting at 8. So you learned. Others, I would make jokes and they'll say, this is the most inappropriate time to make a joke because I'm pregnant. Right? Others have been through divorces.
Yeah.
Do you support people through divorces? So what I say to leaders, if you're going to work with women, there is no formula or script to lead a woman who's going through a divorce. There's no formula or script to lead a woman who is going through an abusive relationship. There's no script to lead a woman who's got postnatal depression. These are the real things that women are going through. You have to learn. You have to understand. You can't say, I'm going to send them to HR. Journey with women so that they can be able to succeed in spite of these challenges that they face. So that's been my journey, and grooming and supporting many young leaders who are women to succeed and get to the next level. That's my life's calling.
Yeah. As we come to conclude, I have a couple of questions from my colleagues, but last month we hosted Prof. Maurice Radebe.
Yes.
And Prof spoke about something he termed spiritual intelligence amongst, emotional intelligence, and so on, IQ. He spoke at length about it. And also from your book, I do get a sense that you come from a family that is grounded in spiritual values. What is in your view the role of spiritual grounding for individuals, and what role does that play in their leadership ethos?
People are different, and they come from different religious persuasion, spiritual persuasion. Mine are 2 big influences. One is my culture. My father taught me what it means to be umsukwini. But that cultural thing does not mean I deny other people's cultures. Because if I'm that, then I'm desecrating my father's culture. Because my father's culture means respect yours, but respect others.
Yeah.
Right? The second one is my spiritual connection with the Almighty. It's a deeply personal thing because I accept God's grace. Grace is something you get even if it's undeserved. When I look at where I am today, it could only be God's grace. How can a high school dropout be a Harvard graduate? How could a university almost dropout be a CEO of a Nasdaq company?
Yeah.
How could a guy who was in and out of jail now have 3 kids and a marriage? All of those things is God's grace. So I never underestimated the role God plays in my life. And for me, giving grace and giving praise to God, I find a way of plowing back and giving so much of what is given me to others. And for my chosen calling of developing young people, that's what I'm passionate about.
Thank you, Mr. Mali. Your mother wrote you a note in the book. And as we conclude, I thought it would be quite fitting to read a note from your mother and what she thinks of you and your leadership in the family and also in your own personal life, because she recognizes you have your own family now with Sva and the children that you have together. Maybe let me read first from Sva, and then I'll come back to your mother's one. Sva, towards the end of her note to you in the book. She says, we the Mali, Samerton, Nanto, and Piti families look up to you as you continue to challenge yourself every day and inspire us to do the same. I am forever grateful for your love and proud to be your soulmate, best friend, and confidant. Your love has made my life's journey that much more worthwhile. This is from Sva. We've seen in the book you're a hopeless romantic, and your mother is your partner in crime because she sponsored your gifts that you were giving to Sva. What I wanted to get at by reading this note from Sva and also from your mother, the question from the colleagues is, we see the situation in the country. We see how corruption has taken over, bad behaviors taking over the country. And what can be done? Is there hope? I actually want to read what the colleague said in her own words. Do you have hope for South Africa?
Yes.
And leaders of the future?
I have amazing hope for this country. I've seen this country when it was dark, when we couldn't go from one part of the township to the next because there was an army, when we had to bury people daily, when there were massacres. Of course, the country is nowhere near where it should be. We, my generation, did not take the baton from the Albertinas Sisulus of this world and make this country better. We've squandered that opportunity. My hope lies with the next generation. When I speak to young people, I see what they see. They are like how I felt when I was young. My job and others is to give them the space, give them the support so that they can take this country to the next level. This country will only succeed if its riches are shared with a broader population. Its flag will fly higher when more people pay allegiance to it. Its rainbow nation will be better if everybody see themselves and their color in that nation. But if we leave people behind, South Africa will not succeed. So it's not going to be easy. But what is required is for South Africans not to be spectators. For South Africans not to want to solve everything. Solve the things you can solve that are in your sphere of influence. People will say, there's a problem of corruption, but their friend is corrupt, and they went to a party of their friend who's corrupt, but they're talking about corruption. Somebody will say, there's nothing for our schools, but I'm spending 30,000 rands in a club, but I can't spare 10 rands to the school where I studied. Somebody will buy 16 cars, but there's no money to give to the school for a bursary where you studied. Those are the building blocks. Let's not go for the exciting things. And everybody says, no, the way to solve this is every one of you, Lincoln, you guys must go back to politics. The people in politics must do politics. People like me have chosen a path. My path is I'm in business, and in business I want to focus on the informal market. I want to focus on financial inclusion. That's what I do. When I'm not at work, I must build a family and raise my kids and my broader family. And thirdly, I must plow back into the community. These are the things I can control. Rather saying we want to do everything and we end up doing nothing. That's my... So let's not say, is there hope for South Africa? Is there hope for your street? Is there hope for your school? Is there hope for your community, your family? Let's hold each other accountable about the things we can do. Then, of course, we must hold the politicians and others accountable. But I think most of the time we want to focus on them. There's going to be an election. Everybody's excited. After the election, then what? Then what? For another 5 years, you don't want to do anything? Your school is collapsing next door. Your church is dilapidated. Your kids are on drugs. right? Your son is involved in GBV. These are the real things.
Yeah.
If we can focus on those things, and every one of us focus on those things as a society, we'll become better. Just like how the country was liberated. I know there are a lot of people who walk around and say they liberated the country. The country was liberated by millions of people by doing small acts of defiance. Imagine if we do small acts of kindness, small acts of accountability, small acts of building. That's what I learned from my father. My father came when the schools were burnt.
Yes.
He went to the parents and says, let's rebuild the schools. The parents said, no, the department must do it. He went to the department also the students.
You bent it yourself.
My father said, let's fundraise and let's build schools. And they built schools called, the thing called Vusisizo.
Yes.
So it's the things we do, right? The program you run here is your contribution. Yeah. Do that to the best of your ability. Somebody else has another thing they're passionate about, they must do that. Then we're okay.
There's so much to talk about, Mr. Mali, because as you mentioned your dad and how he rallied the community to build a school, I'm thinking about the construction of Denqeka Stadium that you speak about in the book. But let's leave sports for now. I found the quote from your mother. I need to read this, to honor your mom and to honor you. Lincoln, I can hear a voice. Mtanam, as a mother, I doubt that it's possible for any mother to be as proud of her son as I am of you. You have achieved everything your father and I desired and gone beyond. Sometimes I smile when I listen or watch you interact with members of our family, and I say, Gunzebo ehleli, ude wamfuza nangokuthanda i-community. I'm grateful for your contribution to the community and our church. Undenze umntu, mntanam. Well done, son. I will keep praying for God to bless you, Nobuntu, and your children. Gladys Smiley, my mom. With those words from your mom, and also every single person who has contributed and written notes, whether they worked with you, they were in the trenches with you as comrades or church leaders. I saw that two quite influential spiritual leaders are friends of yours. They also wrote quotes, the dear Reverend Mukhutu.
Yes.
What I want to say to you, Mr. Mali, as we close, as a parting shot, to say what would you want your legacy to be, and how do you challenge us as leaders to find our own destiny?
I'm not going to answer the first one because I think I'm work in progress, so I'm not worried about legacy.
Sure.
I only want to follow in the footsteps of the people who made me to who I am today. So if my parents, my Uncle Ray, those who are not here, my friends and comrades who are departed, if I'm still following in their path, I'm happy. And I must continue to do so. And when I'm past, then people can deal with the issue of legacy. But my challenge, again, to everybody is in your sphere of influence, make a difference. Make a difference. And make South Africa to regain its status in the world. We punched above our weight at one point. Sia and the team have shown that we can still. Yeah, Banyana have shown we can, punch out, So the Professor Marala is the Vice Chancellor of the United Nations University, right? Trevor Noah is a global name, right? So it is possible. All I'm asking us to do, let's not allow adversity and setbacks to define how great this country can be. How great our families, our schools, our kids can be. That's the issue. people invested in me in the darkest of times. Today, I am what I am. How many other Lincoln Marleys are there who are even better than me?
Yeah.
Let's invest in them. Let's invest in our communities. That's where we start.
Sukwini, Kwama, Divashe, let me take this opportunity to thank you very much. I know that the time went very quickly, and I do hope that we can have another conversation, perhaps broader conversation with the colleagues at our office, where we can interact some more on these lessons on leadership. We are grateful for the knowledge share. This is one of our knowledge share platforms that we hope that by engaging, and for our staff members and broadly communities at large can learn something and move. You've asked us today to shift our perspective, and we are very grateful for your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to the E-Lounge. We hope that you've enjoyed today's session, and most importantly, you are moved to action by the knowledge that has been shared here by Mr. Marley. Thank you very much.